welcome back, all of our listeners from around the world. It is time for a new episode of Real True Facts. I'm Jessica Lang.
And I am Randall Quaid.
Randall Quaid, hello.
Hello. I'm really pretty excited this week. Not only do we have some cool news that's been buzzing the headlines to discuss before we get into our main topic, but our main topic is something I don't know a lot about, so that always excites me.
Me too. For our listeners today, we are going to the land of, I believe, Annie Lennox, bagpipes, and golf. And we're going to talk about that little lady from the Scottish Highlands, Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster.
Right. Yeah, I've only heard rumors, so it'll be great to have an expert with us here to kind of go over the details and what she actually looks like and does, because...
Yeah, I'm excited. I have no idea what kind of monster this is, so hopefully we'll be able to learn all about her today.
Right, and I believe Dr. Seymour is on one of his expeditions this week, so he may or may not be with us. But before we get started talking about the Loch Ness Monster, the current events, a lot of stuff's going on out in space, am I right?
Yes, we have a few current events that are happening in our skies and in our various galaxies. So we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about a few of those things today. The first thing that happened a couple days ago from the time of this recording was over Sendai, Japan. Hopefully I'm saying that right. There was a strange balloon-like UFO that appeared in the sky, and people reported it looking like a large white unmanned balloon attached to two propellers.
Right. And I mean, and Japan was, the government was immediate to say that's not one of ours. Right.
Of course, that's the first thing they say.
Right. And it's Japan. So they're very protective over there. They don't let just anything in. So it's pretty obvious that it didn't just come in from one of the borders, that it came in from above.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was largely motionless, is what the report says, that it lingered in the sky and then it floated for several hours before drifting over the Pacific Ocean. And I think that's the most interesting part about it, is because even though it looked like a balloon would continue to go up. You know, they float up. They don't really just stay still.
Right. This balloon had motives. It had a sense of direction. It was out to accomplish things. It had, places to go.
Yeah, and I think they even tried to pop it. I think they tried to get close enough to pop it or something, but they were unable to do that, and then it drifted out over the Pacific Ocean. So we don't really know what it was for. Yes, it is technically a UFO. No one is taking responsibility for it. I think if it was something big like that, if it was someone's, they would probably come forward and say, oh, yeah, this was mine. I'm missing my propeller balloon, but they didn't. So it's a big possibility that it could be alien.
Sure. Yeah. In today's society, everyone wants to have their claim to fame, their 5 minutes of fame. So, I'm surprised someone hasn't said, hey, that's my weather balloon.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just one more piece of the puzzle. And speaking of this larger puzzle, when it comes to UFOs and outer space, there's been a lot of news lately about the sounds and frequencies coming from, outer space and SETI. And scientists are finally, getting on this and come up with a number of around 36. Is that correct? 36. There may be 36 or more civilizations. And this is just in the Milky Way.
Yeah. Well, they're saying intelligent alien civilizations.
Sure.
There could be up to 36 of them in our galaxy, in the Milky Way. And they're saying that those numbers are actually pretty conservative. There might be even more than that. Because we know it would be bizarre if we were the only planet out there, if there was no other intelligent life. By looking for these extraterrestrial life forms, they say that we are discovering our own future and fate if we're able to do that, because we can ensure the longevity of our species if we know that there's other civilizations out there.
Wow. Yeah. And I mean, as we know from some of our previous episodes, there's really no there's no there's no uncertainty when it comes to are there. It's just how many and when and
Yeah.
where. We already know there are aliens out there and even in here among us.
Mhm.
So it's just now we're kind of waiting on, all right, when is the government going to fess up? When are scientists going to fess up? And when is this going to be more exposed? And, how many different civilizations and kinds of aliens are there?
Well, and all these things are so connected to me. It's like minimum 36. It's like that's such a specific number. They didn't round down, they didn't round up. Like minimum 36 different ancient, intelligent, maybe ancient too, alien civilizations in the galaxy. And this is coming on the coattails of there being more and more UFO sightings on Earth. And so it's either knowledge that we've always had that's starting to come out, or these civilizations or even aliens coming down. We know they exist. We know they're giving us information that we're getting more and more of this information now. This could be leading up to intelligent communication.
Sure. Yeah, we're working on that currently on Earth. You can kind of tell we're using we're kind of like, we're primates, monkeys, kind of rattling
Yeah.
the bones and sticks around and with our radio waves. And then behind closed doors, additional communications experiments are being worked on.
Right. Well, as you know, I'm so ready to make contact. So.
Right. It's time. And so that's just one more thing we do here at Real True Facts is, not only let people know about the truth, but try and nudge forward the progress of humanity. Maybe we can help that contact happen a little bit sooner.
Yeah. Speaking of progress with humanity, there are things happening on our planet and our country of the United States that has to do with topics that we've covered on previous shows. We talked about the Mothman in a previous episode. West Virginia is in the headlines for something good. There's a lot of cryptids, a lot of cryptozoology in West Virginia, and that is where the Mothman is from. This headline is that West Virginians are campaigning to replace Confederate statues with Mothman. And so, a lot of Confederate statues, fortunately, are being taken down, but there really isn't anything to replace them with. And so, those monuments aren't celebrating history. There is a petition in West Virginia to replace those statues with Mothman, which I think is fantastic.
Right. I mean, we know those statues need to go, but the question is, what do we put up? So I think that's and Mothman is a great answer to that question.
Yeah, Mothman brings a lot of people together. He's got psychic abilities that give people premonitions. I think there is a lot that we don't understand still about the motives behind Mothman, but in West Virginian communities, they are bonded by the knowledge that Mothman exists. And there was a quote from the article that says, we have certain stories, oddities, and bizarre pockets of the same state that are unique to our region, and we find a sense of comfort in sharing these things together. And so I think by adding more statues of Mothman, because they already have one, but they want some more, that being able to do that, they can bond their community more and have it come together as something really positive. And even in the article, they do say that the Mothman is kind of a gay icon as well.
Oh, really? As you know, I'm a bit averse to words and articles. I saw some of the pictures, but I wasn't aware of the Mothman being an icon for the pride community or the gay community or the LGBTQ plus.
They've adopted it. It's sort of like how they adopted the Babadook. As sort of a gay icon in pop culture. Obviously, we know the Mothman exists, so it's not really pop culture, but that he's sort of become an icon for misunderstood people.
Okay, sure. That makes sense. And and it's also, I mean, hopefully we'll see more of this going around throughout the country when it comes to, using, taking down old icons that maybe represent oppression and bringing up new icons that bring us together, like the Mothman Wolfman or Bigfoot. And who knows, maybe after this episode, we could recommend a Loch Ness Monster or, a Nessie a statue or monument. I'm hoping, but we never assume she could be a stone cold killer. But that's why we're here today.
Yeah, but I thought that was cool. So I thought that was something that would be nice to report coming from our own country in West Virginia. Because as you know, that's where I'm from. So I always like to see my home state reflected positively in the news. So I think that's it for our headlines today. And really cool stuff in the news. So I'm excited to see how some of these things or all of these things unfold.
Yeah, I agree. So we have a really interesting guest today, as we mentioned, Professor Ian McShane from across the pond, as they say. So why don't we take a quick break and come right back and get into it? How does that sound?
That sounds great. We'll be right back. Back on Real True Facts, talking today about the Loch Ness Monster. With us today from the Oxford Community College, he is a professor of United Kingdom mythology, and the world's foremost expert on Loch Ness is Professor Ian McShane.
Hi, it's great to be here.
Thanks for coming. I believe I may have, one of our producers was telling me in the break that I may have misspoken. It's Ian McShane. I may have said Shane, so I apologize for that.
Well, that is okay. I've learned to deal with it. I am not the most famous Ian McShane working at not the most famous Oxford. So it's sort of a running thing.
Oh, I see. So maybe I should address the elephant in the room first of all. I don't notice an accent. So what's your background? So I'm guessing you don't live over there. You haven't lived over there your entire life then.
No, actually, I was. I came here as a teenager for parents' work, and I kind of stuck around, and I liked it here, and so here I have remained. And the UK has taken me into her bosom, so to speak, and I'm still here. So carved out a nice little niche career here as professor of UK mythology at, of course, Oxford Community College. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Well, we are very excited to have you here today. We know that you are the absolute expert on Loch Ness. We don't know a ton about Nessie. I know that her sightings go all the way back to the 1800s. There's been publications up until the 1930s in Scotland and in the United States as well. But I guess I just want to see, before we really get into it, and because we don't have Dr. Seymour here today, I want to ask you, from a biology standpoint, what kind of creature is the Loch Ness Monster? Because we can't really just say monster. Like, is it a dinosaur? Is it a fish? Like, what kind of animal is it?
Well, I've got to correct you on 2 points, if I may. There is an actual monument to the monster, if you want to call it a monster, in Scotland, near the loch. And contrary to popular belief, Nessie is a boy, not a girl.
Oh.
I could go on to explain that to you. I don't know what the age level is for this podcast, but I could tell you why we know she's a boy if you'd like to hear that.
We can fill in the blanks there. I mean, this is an all ages show. We believe in starting kids young and learning the facts, so we really don't shy away from sugarcoating anything. It's all ages.
The truth is appropriate for all ages, and so that's a great start.
Okay, great. Okay, great, because a lot of people aren't comfortable with this, but the most famous photo of Nessie that you've seen, I'm sure, is this sort of grainy black and white image of the neck and the head of the monster coming up out of the water.
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
That is not, in fact, Nessie's head and neck. That is his erect penis coming up through the water. And it was captured on film, and so a lot of people are not comfortable acknowledging that for all these years they've been staring at a erect monster's penis in their textbooks and so forth all these years. So that is how we know that it is not in fact a female.
So, in that respect, it sounds like we have our scale may be a bit skewed. Then how big is the Loch Ness Monster if that was just the phallus?
Well, that is a great question, and that is something that we've worked at, working over the years to come up with an approximate size for the monster based on the measurements of the phallus, of course, and then using that to then proportion out the rest of the great beast. And so we estimate that based on the phallus, that the creature itself is probably from head to tail under the surface of the water about a half mile long.
Wow.
So the about a fourth of the size of the loch itself.
So the loch is a pond, a river, a beach. Forgive me, I'm an American.
It is a lake. So if you think loch, lake, yes. And there, it's a gorgeous vista. There's a small ruin of Loch Ness Castle on the banks, and one of the loveliest yarn factories that you will ever visit in the Highlands, very close by, where you can purchase scarves, kilts, knitwear, based on your respective clans. And that's Scottish clans. Yeah.
There's a lot of ritual there.
Very much so. A lot of mysticism surrounding the area. The sort of the stereotypical bagpipe music emanating from somewhere, So and appropriately enough, as we're recording this episode, it is the summer solstice. So it is a very mystical time, particularly here in Oxford. The summer solstice is not only the longest day of the year, but it usually means there'll be a few goats missing from some farms tomorrow morning.
Sure, of course.
Do you find that during these mystical times, during the year, like solstices, are Loch Ness sightings more frequent, or does Nessie tend to take the day off during those things?
Well, certainly there are more visitors to the loch at times like these. Whether or not you see her, I would not say that it's more frequent because of the holiday, or
Now,
for there being more visitors.
Now, you just said her, although we know now that the creature is male. Are we looking at sort of a gender neutral thing? Are we looking at like a gender fluid sort of creature?
No, that is my own problem, because I've mixed up my pronouns, having been for so long under the impression that it was a female.
Right.
And it's only in the last several years that we've made this discovery, as I said, about the erect phallus, and then our research has proceeded from there. So I'm as guilty of it as anyone.
Now, what brought you to the conclusion that the pictures we have seen of the monster's head is not the one that we think it is? Like, what brought you to that conclusion?
Well, okay, so based on the photo, we went in with a healthy skepticism.
Sure.
And you asked earlier if it's a monster, if it's a dinosaur. So we went on in with the impression that this could be some prehistoric beast, a dinosaur, if you will. And if we look at the shifting of the tectonic plates and the former landmass bridges and so forth, it is quite possible that a dinosaur, a prehistoric beast of some kind, could have made its way into Scotland before the UK split off and became an island. Mm-hmm. So working under that assumption, we then made a study of a dinosaur genitalia, which is a very niche field, if you will. Okay. And based on certain prehistoric paintings, drawings, I guess what you would consider to be their form of pornography in the ancient days.
Cave paintings?
Say that again?
Cave paintings?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Based on these things, we then went in with the assumption that perhaps there's something different that we're looking at here. Then we brought in a team of anatomists and other biological scientists, and then we came to a consensus that this is something different that we're looking at.
Yeah, so it's like we've been holding the book but upside down, and then you turn it and you're like, oh, okay. Like, you're looking at something, but you don't know from what angle.
Exactly right.
So it is comforting to know that it was a scientific consensus and not just, one person saying, hey, you know what, I bet that's something else, So that's comforting.
Yeah.
Oh, no person in their right mind would go out into the scientific community and just trample all over years and years of research and say, you know what, that's a penis.
Yeah. It never even crossed my mind until this moment.
Yeah, it's not been easy. If I can be honest with you, it's not been easy for me to go around and sort of dispel a lot of the previous thinking on this monster and say, first of all, no, that's a male, and second of all, to sort of be known as the Loch Ness penis guy.
Mm-hmm. Have you received a lot of pushback from the scientific community regarding this?
Very, very much so. Just within the UK itself, and even in Scotland, they are very tied to their cultural touchstones. I mean, you may as well spit in the face of Sean Connery to then say, "This is a male. This is not Nessie. Everything you've lived is a lie," and so it's very tough. Yeah.
Wow. And
and of course I don't sound like the natives, so makes it even easier to sort of be pushed to the fringe.
You're a foreigner, you're an outsider. What do you know? How dare you come in here with your science talk and your books and your research and your facts and tell us what to think?
Yeah.
I can only imagine, but it's really important that you're finally setting the record straight, and that's what we're all about here on Real True Facts, is setting the record straight, making sure the public is aware, rather than just being another sheep off to the the winter solstice or summer solstice slaughter.
Yeah. Let me also add real quick of what a great service the two of you, Randall and Jessica, are doing with your show, because these are not comfortable things that for people to talk about, whether it be Loch Ness, the Mothman, cats as aliens. I've listened to some of the past episodes, so pat yourselves on the back.
It takes a lot of bravery, I think, to do what we do, but even more than that, I think it's very brave from our guests' point of view, because we have spoken to a lot of various professors and doctors that are now shunned from the communities that they do their work in, because they are saying these things that are very controversial and maybe not widely accepted.
Exactly.
But it's
exactly right.
Yeah, it's the truth nonetheless. So, it's very exciting to be able to talk to someone like you. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
So, wow, now that we have this new kind of foundation of knowledge, moving forward, there are so many more questions to ask. And I mean, one simple one that I'd like to start with: how old do we believe that the Ness? I don't know if I should still call it Nessie or a Nestor, or
we say Nestor. Yes, you're exactly right. We say Nestor.
Wow, Nestor. Okay. Well, how old do we think this might? Since there have been sightings for a long time, but frankly, I don't know what the lifespan of a dinosaur is. So what are we talking about here?
Well, we believe that this is still the original beast or dinosaur in the loch, those of us in the Nestor camp, if you will. And so we're talking about, easily in the neighborhood of 20 million years old. But there is a belief in Scotland that you've, of course, heard of the famous Scottish Highlands, that these are instead burial mounds for Nestor's predecessors. And this is only the latest iteration in the line that is in the loch.
So how are these predecessors getting to the burial grounds?
Well, See, I don't believe that's what they are. But again, the beliefs are that these are burial mounds, so they've died over the years. Of course, long before any of us were around, and so over time, with elements and the wind and the rain and the mud and all those types of things, sediments have settled over the carcasses of these great beasts and formed the islands. But again, I think this is too far fetched. These are not burial mounds for some ancient monsters.
It could be that there was a body of water there at one point, and over the generations, that lake has dried up, and with it, we have remnants. We have these fossils. So it would appear to be a burial ground, but maybe it was just a lake bed that dried
that
up.
kind of reeks of Paul Bunyan's footsteps being and
Right.
kind of a tall tale. So I can see that. So we're talking about an ancient beast here that's living in a lake. Second of all, or third, are there any concerns for, people's safety? It seems like, there haven't been attacks or anything, but it makes you wonder how this coexistence works. It sounds like it's working out, other than the fact that we want more information, but is there...
There may be some missing sheep.
Yeah. Is there any sense of danger for humans? Maybe for sheep, I guess. But
well, first of all, the loch is very well protected. It's become sort of almost a sacred site, and so it's very tough to get actually down to the water itself and dip a toe in, as it were. So, from a danger standpoint, it's not very easy to do that. From a second standpoint, like I said, this is such a reverence for this beast that no one would dare, have a go at him, so to speak. And then, if you're asking what does he eat, well, we believe, being essentially marine life, that he feeds on various fish and other aquatic beasts. That he's a pescatarian, if you will. So no one is in danger. That we've been able to ascertain over the years. There are no recordings of people, half-eaten trunks of humans washed up on the shore.
Sure,
We've not found that.
So the locals don't live in fear of this creature.
Oh, no. This is essentially, like a college in the U.S. having a mascot on their campus, a live animal. It's sort of that kind of thing. It's a much pride is taken in Nestor.
Wow.
Nestor.
Okay, it's a point of pride.
I love that. I love a town having pride for this ancient animal. And, I feel like there would be a lot of attempts to exploit him, but it appears just from listening to you that there really isn't. It's more of like an appreciation and preservation of its existence.
Well, that doesn't mean that there haven't been attempts over the years from folks to exploit Nestor. In fact, one of the most famous cases took place in 1972.
1972.
And yes, and so there was an individual. I won't even deign to say his name to give him the publicity he would so enjoy. But what he did was he took bits of old tires and he painted them sort of a brownish green. Mm-hmm. And he cut them into pieces, large pieces, and he scattered them along the shore of the loch. And then he ran to the BBC screaming that Nessie at the time, of course, really female, had been destroyed by an outboard motor, of all things, on a boat, on a fishing boat in the lake.
Oh, like chopped up from the motor.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And the children were devastated, obviously, at that time. Because as I said, he's a hero. He's a hero to the people, and so. But this was quickly debunked upon investigation when folks noticed treads in the body, supposed body parts.
Sure.
So that was a quick one. But there was a moment in time where, for a brief second, where people said, oh dear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
You know,
bet that was a big scare.
so
And I'd like to touch on something that you mentioned that the Loch Ness Monster, or Nestor, as we now know, is a hero. I'd like to touch on that a little bit further, but maybe we should take a quick break.
Yeah, sounds good.
well, game if you are. Yes.
We're back on Real True Facts this week, discussing the Loch Ness Monster and continuing our streak of revelations here on Real True Facts. It turns out it's not necessarily Nessie, but Nestor, because it is in fact a male. One thing that really piqued my interest, Professor McShane, is you mentioned the heroic nature of the Loch Ness Monster. And you had the great story of, back in the 70s, someone trying to take advantage of, get some publicity. I was wondering what kind of, maybe examples or stories there were of the Loch Ness Monster and performing either heroic service. I don't know that he necessarily comes out of the water and, saves the baby from a burning building, but I don't know, that's why you're here. So why, I guess the big question is why and how do we consider this monster a hero?
Well, I think the thing that you have to understand is not that he's done any heroic deed, so to speak, but that it's more of a civic pride sort of thing. He's not rescued anyone, but he's held up as a symbol of someone that they take great pride in, knowing that he's been in the community for so long, like an elder statesman.
Right, perhaps in the same way that the West Virginians revere Mothman. This is the same way that Scotland reveres Loch Ness.
Oh yes, that's a great connection there. Yeah,
and to be honest, it would be pretty easy for an animal of this size to take advantage and wreak havoc over its local area, and even much further and farther than that. So, maybe there's some heroism in the restraint and the lack of action, because it could easily just tear apart the entire city and,
well, that is one great mystery that we don't have the answer to, and that is, why does he just never leave the lake? Why doesn't he, take a walkabout and just, destroy everything in his path? We don't know the answer to that yet, I'm afraid. It's a question that we want to dig into in the years to come. But yeah.
Interesting. So, and I think that's, we always have more to learn when it comes to animals and science, and we just assume that they're so much different than humans, even though it sounds like we have a lot in common, that, maybe Nestor just wants to live a peaceful life. And our question is, well, why don't you come out and, terrorize the locals? It's just not in his nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what he has might be enough, in the same way when we were talking about Bigfoot with Ranger Steve. The Bigfoot are solitary creatures, and they love what they have, and they don't really need much else. It could be the same with Nestor as well. And there could be a touch of not being able to leave the lake. It could be a survival thing in the same way that, frogs, some of them can leave for a little bit, but they have to come back because their skin relies on moisture. I'm just guessing maybe.
Well, I like to believe personally that he's, over the years, taken on some of the traits of the Scottish people themselves, and simply just, he loves his space in the world, and you couldn't move him out of there with a barge pole, as we say, around the campus. And he's just happy where he's at, and that's okay. That's enough for Nestor. And that's kind of what I like to believe. From a personal standpoint, from a scientific standpoint, we're gonna have to get in there poking a little bit. Mm-hmm. Really scratch the surface on this.
Sure. I think maybe from an emotional standpoint, it's like, okay, it's enough. Isn't that what we
Hmm.
all want? Is just to be enough.
Hmm. Yeah.
I want to ask you, Professor Ian, what made you want to focus on the Loch Ness Monster?
Well, it's not the sexiest of stories, but we were on a family holiday when I was a child, and we were going up to Edinburgh. My father was a tremendous golfer, and he was playing the courses one weekend in Edinburgh, and we went through Loch Ness, and my father had a tea time. And so we didn't have time to stop off to visit the loch. In fact, I remember saying, "Can we stop to visit the loch?" And my father said, uh, uh, "No, we don't have time." So I I always sort of kept that with me for a number of years, and so it just stuck with me. It sort of drove me in a weird way, and yeah, so that's sort of how I got into it. I once I started digging, I couldn't stop.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost as if you're making up for that lost time. You never got that chance originally, and now you're just, making up for that
Oh,
time and
yes,
can never stop.
I freely admit that. Yes, yes. It's like I said, it's not the sexiest of stories, but that's what did it for me. And then, like I said, once you started digging into learning more about it, and then it's how do you stop? You can't.
That sounds like very meaningful work.
Yeah, look who I'm talking to. You guys are doing the same thing. You're scratching the surfaces of these different the Mothman, Bigfoot, so on and so forth, and you have a passion for it. So you understand, I'm sure, where I'm coming from.
We do, we do. We may not have the education or official title,
Oh,
but
definitely not.
oh yeah, I mean, but the enthusiasm is there, and like I hope all scientists, we have the quest for the truth. We don't want to stop our jobs until we know that the truth is completely out there.
Well, anytime the two of you want to join me at Oxford, which I'm legally required to follow with the words community college, long
Mhm.
story, but anytime you two want to join me and take a class or work on some research with me, you have an open invitation.
Oh, that's
Wow,
wonderful.
cool. Very cool.
Yeah, that actually kind of informs me of my next question. So, if we were going to go out, if an amateur uh, science communicator or a sleuth or Loch Ness Appreciation Society was going to go out and try and make contact with the monster, what would be the appropriate steps to do that?
Well, first you'll have to get a permit to get down to the water's edge, to get close enough to the lake. That's first and foremost. Second, what we've seen so far is that sonar equipment has actually worked the best um, in terms of communicating with Nestor. Um, and then an open mind and patience, because as you know, as I say to everyone, you may want to talk to Nestor in your time, but Nestor will talk to you in his time. And so I think that's important. So that's as important as anything is patience, and the permit. That is also very important.
So that
Now,
was actually going to my next question was kind of why don't we ever see it, or why aren't there a lot of good photos? But just the communication aspect almost answered that question, and that just because you go there and you want a photo doesn't mean you're going to get one. Just because you want to take a photo doesn't mean Nestor wants to be seen. So I think that makes a lot of sense as to why we don't necessarily have a lot of photos. But you touched on communication, and I find that extremely interesting.
Mhm.
What kind of communications have you had to or from Nestor?
So what we've done so far is we've tried bouncing sonar waves underwater off of different points in the loch.
mm,
And what we've found, of course, is we've heard different things like natural sort of fishy sounds, but occasionally we will get these sounds that I can only describe to you as like a cross between a whale call and sort of like a dolphin, like a high-pitched squeak of a dolphin. It's very hard to describe, but that's the best that I can do. And so we've gotten some very sharp bursts of this sound, and we believe that this is Nestor. We've never been able to duplicate these sounds in any other body of water with any other aquatic sea life, and so. So yeah, I hope I'm answering your question. I feel like
So it's a very, from what I understand, it's a very specialized kind of sonar.
yes, yes,
Hmm.
specifically designed in mind with trying to communicate with Nestor. Yes.
So it sounds like you're still in the early stages of this, using our technology, and then we haven't quite nailed down, or I should say, haven't quite translated anything yet. We're still trying to nail down the actual signal.
That's right. We were pretty pleased with the fact that we got the sounds in the first place. Now it's still going to require some time and effort to figure out what he's saying, if anything at all. Are these actual his language? Is this are these cries of pain? Is this cries of happiness? We don't know that yet.
Right.
But I'd love to come back and talk to you in the future about it.
Yeah, I mean, continue your work. Any breakthroughs, we're obviously very open to having them debuted on this show. Have you been able to replicate any of these sounds?
No, not with not with other. Like I said, not with other bodies of water or animals or undersea life or anything like that. I mean, I couldn't even do it justice if I tried to to do it for you now.
Oh, that's fine. You don't need to.
Yeah, you don't have to do that.
But have you considered or tried using other animals? Like you said, it maybe sounded like a dolphin, maybe using recordings of dolphins, or even taking a dolphin and, throwing it in the water. I mean, I guess we don't really know what the dolphin is saying, but I wonder if they could communicate in some way.
Well, they could possibly. You've caught me flat-footed there. We have not tried throwing a dolphin in the loch.
I guess when you say it like that, it is a little ridiculous.
Yeah, when you say it like that, it is.
They're not easy to come by.
Right.
But
they are delicious.
I'm quite embarrassed.
I don't know what kind of water is in the loch. It could be fresh water. It could be salt water. I don't know. You don't want to throw something in there that's not used to fresh water.
I'm gonna write that down though.
I know that when the Inverness Courier reported about it in the 30s, they did describe it as a beast or a whale-like fish. So, operating off of that, it would stand to reason that the communication you're receiving is a very much whale-like sonar. So, you understand those patterns. If you could guess, because you spend all your life researching, if you could guess what Nestor is trying to say, what do you think that would be?
I think he's saying, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay. And maybe he's saying you're okay too.
Yeah.
I'd like to think he, after all these years, sort of recognizes us. I'd like to think he sees us from below the water surface. That's what I'd like to think he's saying.
Well, and from what you've told us, there hasn't been any instances of violence, so there really is no cause for alarm. And we know, because of the solstice celebrations, that there is sort of this level of supernatural qualities or mystical qualities surrounding the loch. And so, you might be able to pick up on a vibe or, a spirit of the region or something that would be able to give you these messages. Maybe. I'm always going to bring it back to ghosts or things like that.
Yes.
So don't let me put words in your mouth, but that's...
Well, it's very intriguing. I am a amateur fan of the paranormal myself. I don't just, study Nestor all day. I branch out and, that's quite possible. I mean, we very much feel the influence of the Celts. still here. There are a few druids in some of the more rural areas that we sort of just leave them to themselves. But who knows what they get up to up there? Probably maybe meth. We think meth, but anyway. So yes, there's definitely still some of the supernatural around there. What correlation does it have with Nestor? I don't know, but it might be worth a look to actually visit the loch on one of such of these nights and see what happens.
Yeah. Do you know what Nestor actually looks like?
I don't. I don't know. We can only conjecture. I mean, of course, I said we're talking about a beast that's half a mile long, we believe, and so to be able to see it, or at least part of it is all we've been able to do so far.
Yeah.
But
well,
in my head, it looks like a brontosaurus.
Yeah.
Wow. So I think we've established that it has to be a bit of a peaceful creature, or else you probably wouldn't be here to talk about it. It being so large and having such control and possibly even mysticism or spiritual abilities. So I like that fact that it seems like a peaceful and happy being.
I fully believe that we are at his mercy, and every day, is in the back of your mind, is especially when you're on site. It's just don't piss him off.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you want? Amateur scientists, investigators, groups, what do you want them to know if they're going to come into the area? Obviously, we've established the fact that you need a permit. But just based on all that stuff, all the things that you've told us, what's something that you wish you knew starting all of this that you can impart to the new generation?
Well, if I can be frank, this is such a niche field that if you're thinking about getting into it, don't stick your nose in my business, because I'll knock it off. You're messing with my bread and butter. But if you want to pursue something else, then I say you just need an open mind. You need to be open to any and all possibilities, especially in a field like this, where we are studying creatures about which there is so much mythology and so much lore, to use a word, around them. So it's important that you keep an open mind to separate fact from fiction, and then how to apply scientific principles to studying this. However emotional we may get at the end of the day, however attached we may be, we need to always bring a scientific approach to this. And like I said, keep an open mind, no preconceived notions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's one thing it seems to be a common theme every time, we encounter something new and we say, what advice would you have? Keep an open mind is really, it's recurring, but I think it's important to mention every time, because we think, what we see or what we hear may be the truth, but as we found out time and time again, that may not necessarily be the case.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. We come in with our ideas of what we think it might be, and then after we speak with our experts, we just come out of it changed. We have paradigm shifts all the time. We've got epiphanies. I think back to the last episode about lizard people. What I learned about them, I had no clue, and so it's always so enlightening. And important to keep an open mind. So it's not funny, haha, but it is funny that all of our experts keep just reiterating, keep an open mind.
That's so true. Yes.
And on that note, why don't we take one final break, and then we'll finish up here with Professor Ian McShane. And Jessica, do we have any mail to divulge this week?
Yes, we do. We've got a few questions, so we'll answer some of our listener mail when we come right back. So we've been talking talking today with Professor Ian McShane from Oxford Community College. He is the world's foremost expert on the Loch Ness Monster and professor of United Kingdom mythology. I just want to say thank you, Professor Ian, for coming on the show today. We've learned so much from you, and also that we should not get in the way of your research, it sounds like, which we don't intend to, but let that be a warning to any of you young hotshots coming in. You've got the market cornered. So
I hate to be that guy, but I had to say it. So anyway, don't hold it against me.
Yeah, no, we don't. You're passionate about what you do, and we certainly appreciate that. And we've learned so much. I mean, knowing what we know now about biology and the sex of the monster, and I say monster lovingly because I guess to this day we still have not seen a full image of Nestor, but we know the approximate size and maybe what he wants. Wants to be left alone, but in a peaceful way. It's very important to the community and to the people of Scotland. So we thank you for coming on. Is there anything that you'd like to leave us with?
No, just that I think you guys are doing a fantastic job. Keep on doing what you're doing, and I'm so pleased to have been invited to your show to talk about a topic that frankly we don't get a chance to talk about very much outside the classroom. So this was a lot of fun for me. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thanks for coming. So, Jessica, you mentioned
Yes.
you had some mail that we wanted to get to this week. What do we have cooking?
Oh, we've got a few emails today. We have one from Harrison from Harrisburg. He writes, the episode with Dr. Lauren J. made me think about Egyptian pyramids again. Last week, we had Dr. Lauren J. back on to talk about lizard people.
Oh, okay.
They made me think about Egyptian pyramids again. What connections, if any, are there to the pyramids in Central and South America? More aliens, humans learning from aliens. Thanks.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a whole another part of the world, as far as I know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, that could be a show in itself. The short answer is yes, aliens.
Yes.
We're involved
Yes.
in those, of course, but there that does delve a little bit deeper. So that we'll have to put that one on the big board for possible.
Yeah, we will. I can't really answer this, but I have been to a pyramid in Central America, and I can say that they are similar shapes, but I believe the ones that I visited served a different function beyond burial or being atop catacombs or anything like that. I believe it was more of like a maybe sacrificial kind of thing. I'm not sure. It may have been from a different civilization, but we are very confident in saying that the aliens did have a lot to do with it. Perhaps humans learning from aliens. So we are continuing our study and talk about aliens and aliens among us. So that might be something that we'll have to get into in the future about more alien architecture.
That's ripe for follow-up. Yeah.
It is, yeah. So, yeah, that's he says parallels. That's the subject of the email. Certainly, there are certainly parallels there.
Yeah, thank you for that email, Harrison. I think it was.
Yes.
What's our email address for all the other folks out there?
Our email is realtruefactsmail@gmail.com.
Okay.
You can send us questions there, comments. We'll read them on the show. We will answer them to the best of our ability. If we like it and we don't know the answer, we might do an episode of it. So you might be able to get featured that way.
Yeah, please be patient. We can't get to all of them. We have to vet them thoroughly, and so that's why you only hear one or two a week or three, and sometimes none, because we really do have to take the time to vet them.
We have a lot of emails today, but we'll read like two more and then save some more for later. We've got one that's it's from a kid.
A kid, a child?
Yeah, a child. This is Christopher, age 3, which is so cool because we did mention earlier in the show that the truth really knows no age. And so it's cool that kids are listening and maybe they're having conversations with their parents. about what is really going on out there. So Christopher, age 3, we don't know where he's from, but that's okay. Christopher asks, what are the lines in the sky from? Airplanes, rocket ships, asteroids? Question mark. I imagine his mom or dad transcribed this for him, but he wants to know what the lines in the sky are from.
Right. Yeah, that's moisture in the sky, and that becomes apparent when, something like an airplane or really any other object in the atmosphere kind of heats up or cuts through that moisture. So, an airplane, a UFO, any other object. It's kind of like, what are those ripples in the water from? Well, anything that rippled the water.
Yeah. So it's when they burn fuel, there's exhaust from that. There's moisture in the air, and you can see that when the light refracts off of moisture. That's when you get a rainbow. So those are lines in the sky as well. So not everything is crazy aliens. Sometimes it's just really simple science, and fortunately we're able to answer those questions for you.
But thanks for reaching out.
Yeah. So we've got one more.
Okay.
This is from Drew S. Drew wants to know, do The Simpsons really predict the future? They have episodes about the pandemic, the Trump presidency, 9/11, the Higgs-Boson equation, censorship of the David, autocorrect, smartwatches, Ebola, Disney buying 20th Century Fox, Game of Thrones, etc. That's a lot of stuff. All these things happened in the show. Is this true?
Yeah, and I mean, yes, they do predict the future. And how is that possible? Well, when they mentioned the Trump presidency, it was mentioned offhand as a joke, and there wasn't an actual episode about it. When
some of these things are just jokes. They're not.
Yeah,
they're not.
And that's what it all comes down to, is when you pack as many jokes into an episode as The Simpsons, you're going to hit on some of them. Some of them are going to come true. If you say, just like Nostradamus, he wrote a book of, hundreds or thousands of prophecies, you got to get a couple of them right.
Right.
So yeah, they did. And but I would be up for exploring, the prophesizing power of The Simpsons, because I know there are some really smart folks involved. So it wouldn't surprise me if there was even more to it, some mystical qualities. But I know the factual bit, but I'd have to delve deeper myself. What about you, Jessica?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested in prophecies and predictions. We are friends of psychic abilities on this show, but I think back to the segment we did called Real True Fiction. It's like sometimes Hollywood does get it right.
Exactly.
And so where are they getting their information from? I mean, sometimes they do get it right. So are they guessing, or do they have some kind of dial-in to a higher power?
Yeah, they could very well be tapped into some greater knowledge that we're not aware of. I think prophecies, that's a pretty cool nut that we may look to crack in the upcoming future.
Yeah,
I mean.
Hey, I saw what you did there. Prophecy, future.
Yes.
Yeah. It was funny to me.
Every once in a while, I do make
every once in a while. Yeah, it's a layered thing. But we can get into that. Maybe next week can be another mystery episode. Loch Ness was a mystery episode for us. We don't always want to give away what we're gonna do, but maybe next week tune in and you'll see what we talk about.
Sure.
So that's it today for our mailbag. We can close that up, and hopefully Dr. Seymour can join us next week. I know he was on assignment today. He's been busy cloning bees, and so we wish him all the luck with that. He'll return in the near future. But wonderful show today. I love everything that we learned about Loch Ness, and there's a lot of new things that we know, but then there's still some things that we don't know. And I think that's important to acknowledge that it's okay to not have the definite answers all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes we think, that's what we're all about, real true facts. We're going to get to the bottom of everything, but it's impossible. And if you only accept, some kind of answer to your question, it may not necessarily be the right one. So that's why you make a good point to say that, uncertainty is as certain as anything else.
And if we knew the answer to everything, we wouldn't have science. And science is really at the root of what we're doing. So by admitting that we don't know, we are supporting science. We are supporting the continued search for the truth. So that is also important to acknowledge as well. And with that, I think that is it for today. I want to thank our guest, Professor Ian McShane, for joining us this week. And thank you again to our listeners from all over the world that tune in and support our show. We mentioned earlier our email address, realtruefactsmail@gmail.com. You're always welcome to email us there. We also have our Instagram at realtruefactsgram, where you can get more info behind the show and our guests. And we're on some other things too, right?
Yes, I love the learning, and we are on the YouTubes, and be sure to listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, and Podbean. The biggest platforms. We're there to listen. We're there for you to listen. So leave us a review and some feedback, because we're always open to suggestions, and we want to hear from you.
Yeah, we do. And tell your friends. That helps us do our job better. More people listen, more people can get the truth. So please follow us, like us, do all that good stuff that we want you to do. And I think that'll be it. So we'll see you next week. We will have another wonderful topic for you to wrap your brains around, and we'll learn more about our world. And to your viewers, like we always say, keep questioning your world, because just because you hear about it or read it doesn't mean it's true. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time on Real True Facts.